Ka stood alone on the landing pad of the royal estate. He'd come alone at Kesarah's insistence that she needed more time to get ready for the evening. Ka had arrived by himself and turned their driver around to pick up Kesarah. He was not privy to what she intended to do, but whatever it was, he was curious to see what she had in mind. Other guests of the royal household passed him by as he waited patiently, casting a curious glance at him and in some cases whispering quietly to one another. He heard a few of the whispered words, and by skimming their thoughts he could discern what it was that made them whisper at his presence. He'd become somewhat infamous and perhaps even something of a celebrity for his stunt at the arena. Some of the thoughts were filled with awe, others resentment. A few, amusingly enough, seemed to think that he should work as the animal handler for the royal family. A handful, even fewer, had more intimate thoughts that caused Ka's face to flush slightly, even as he tried to maintain his composure. Somewhat embarrassingly, those intimate and arguably scandalous thoughts turned his mind to Kesarah's drunken revelry of the previous evening. He couldn't deny that she was beautiful, and that if he were honest with himself, under more sober circumstances he might have enjoyed her advances. As it had been, though, he'd have felt nothing short of horrible about himself as she'd remained conscious long enough for her momentary intimacy to continue. After all, she had hardly been aware of what she was doing, and aside from her return to her somewhat flirtatious tone with him, hadn't intimated any intention of further pursuing that accidental intimacy beyond insisting he call her Kessa. It was then that he saw their lavish air car approaching the pad. Stepping forwards as it alighted in its landing area, he opened the door and offered his hand to Kesarah. "Nice of you to join me, finally," he chided with a friendly smile. "Sorry," Kesarah said in a tone that was very obviously said she was not. "I had a lot to get ready." Ka's heart stopped as she stepped out of the air car, and he got a good look at what she was wearing. Her arms were adorned in long sleeves that ended to a point in her wrists and hugged her shoulders, sloping down to leave her collar and neckline bare to connect to her dress. Her breasts were cupped tightly, her dress allowing the curves of her body intimately and leaving little to the imagination as it hugged her hips and flowed down to her feet. The dress was folded on itself. When Kesarah swung her legs out of the air car, Ka got a glimpse of high-heeled toes, interweaving laces, running up the length of her legs. The crown of the outfit, which was a reflective obsidian black in color, was a headpiece that wrapped around Kesarah's forehead and sleeved the length of her leku. "You look," Ka said breathlessly as he tried to find words. He gave up after a moment and simply shared his thoughts with her, bringing forth a bright smile from Kesarah. "Thank you," she beamed at him as she took him in his arm. "Let's go tease some more people." Seeing Ka standing at the landing pad waiting for her actually made Kesarah smile. He'd chosen a simple black suit to wear. It was simple, yet well cut. She knew she'd picked it out for him. As the air car settled down, she took a moment to appreciate the way he'd filled out the suit. Once again, she was pleased with the figure he cast, and when he opened the door, she was delighted to see the smile on his features turn to a look of shock. When his words failed him, it was her turn to catch her breath as his thoughts filtered into her mind. They were intimate. "Thank you," she said with a smile, looping her arm through his. "Let's go tease some more people." He looked at her with a nervous smile. "You know you're not making this easy on me. I still have no idea what you're planning." Kesarah winked at him. "Well, you'll see. You're getting punished too, you know." Ka sighed, shaking his head as he turned his gaze ahead of them. "So, when do you dance with the prince tonight? After the first dance?" Smirking, Kesarah leaned up and kissed him on the cheek as she whispered to him huskily, "Play along, and I'll spend the whole night in your arms." She watched with delight as he stiffened and looked down at her in surprise. "Poor Jedi," she teased. "Don't know what to do with me." Ka smiled nervously. "Well, you aren't included in any of the training." Kesarah giggled impishly, leaning in on him closely as they entered the ballroom. "They could never train you for me, Ka. Only I can do that." "You made it!" cried Princess Alicia as she came bounding forwards in a flame-red dress that ended at her knees and blossomed in frills. "I was looking for you." She beamed up at Ka as she tugged on his arm. "Come dance with me, Nighthawn." Kesarah smiled at the young girl, turning Ka to herself fully. "He's mine tonight." Princess Alicia frowned. "I don't want him to dance with me." Raising an eyebrow, Kesarah merely smirked as she looked up at Ka. "Not tonight, Your Highness. Perhaps another time." Ka put his hand on the small of Kesarah's back, guiding her out of the princess's way so that he could bow to her courteously. "I'm afraid my partner has requested my company for the evening, Your Highness. May I have your promise for the next dance at our next meeting?" The princess pouted, but smiled happily despite the denial. "Have your word, noble Jedi?" Ka bowed. "You do." Still smiling, Princess Alicia nodded. "I'll hold you to it." With that she turned and joined the throng of guests as Kesarah looked up at Ka slyly. "I was wondering if you might abandon me." "The thought had occurred to me," Ka replied, raising Kesarah's ire from him as he leaned in and smirked at her, "but I would miss out on your great reveal." Kesarah pursed her lips, looking at him playfully. "Oh? So is that the only reason you're staying with me?" Ka's smirk turned into a warm smile. "Well, you have grown on me quite a bit. I might actually enjoy your company." Giving Ka an affronted gasp, Kesarah leaned in closer to him. "Why, Nighthawn, that's not very Jedi-like." Ka shrugged. "I was raised and trained by two married Jedi who loved one another and their children. According to the code, that isn't Jedi-like at all." Kesarah hesitated a moment, swallowing as she looked away from him, her leku rippling uneasily. "Careful. If you told me too tightly, I might slip away." "Isn't that my line?" he inquired, as the hands holding her became immaterial. She eyed him accusingly. More of your tricks? The next thing you'll do is walk right through the palace walls. Ka's dark blue eyes gazed deep into Kesarah's own rich brown. I would carry you through them with me if you'd let me. Laughing, Kesarah eyed Prince Brannock as he spied them and approached. Perhaps I'll ask you to, depending on how the prince takes this next part. He's quite taken with you, isn't he? Ka remarked with a smile. Perhaps I should let him have the first dance again? Kesarah glared for a moment. You do, and I'll never forgive you. To the newly arrived prince she cast a winning smile. Your Highness, I trust you're having a pleasant evening? The prince very obviously eyed Kesarah's figure with hungry eyes, his lips parted, and she saw his tongue play across his teeth. If she weren't intent on scorning him, she might have found such obvious desire charming. However, tonight was her night to be on top, no one else's. It has become far more pleasant, the prince remarked, now that you've arrived. Kesarah gave a charming laugh as she rocked on Ka's arm. Oh, you flatter me. I'm sure you have plenty of eligible young women waiting upon you. The prince eyed Kesarah for a moment uncertainly, his gaze flicking to Ka before he returned his attention to her. They lack your whimsical charm, Knight Diligus, he remarked with a ready smile. What he meant, Kesarah supposed, was that they lacked the political impact of being seen with both a Jedi and a representative of the Republic. She would not be lured into that snare again. He wants very much to have you, Ka's voice whispered in her mind. The sudden intrusion threw Kesarah off for a moment, and it was a fight to maintain her composure as she continued to smile at the prince as he offered her his hand. Might I have this dance? Kesarah shook her head, her black-sheathed leku dancing behind her. She emphasized her hold on Ka's arm. I'm afraid I owe my partner a dance first, Your Highness. I was very rude to him the last time, and I've promised to make it up to him now. I see, the prince said with a frown. Could I have your promise for the following dance? Perhaps, Kesarah said loftily, reveling in the consternation she could sense radiating from the prince, as she let Ka guide her out into the dance floor. Ka had to admit that watching Kesarah dance around the prince, infuriating him in the process, was quite a delight in its own right. He'd have been denying it if he were to say that he hadn't been just a little bit entertained when the prince had caught Kesarah flat-footed their first night here, but now it was equally and in many ways far more amusing to see her in what appeared to be her element. You're smiling, Kesarah scolded, as they walked down to the dance floor. People might think you're enjoying yourself. Ka bowed his head slightly. I am enjoying you. Kesarah laughed, her voice tinkling with mirth. That was quite fun, wasn't it? She leaned in conspiratorially. Is he still watching us? Ka nodded. He's livid. That brought a wide grin from Kesarah as she turned into Ka, putting her hand on his as he took her by the waist. Are you ready to truly shock them? She asked, her excitement palpable. Ka nodded. Just tell me what to do. With an eager grin, she looked up at his face. Just read my thoughts, she eyed him accusingly. Nothing too deep, just enough to know what I want you to do. Hesitating, Ka nodded, uncertain what she had in mind as they began to dance. The mental link was easy enough to establish, and he was careful not to delve deeply into the layer that separated him from Kesarah's deeper thoughts and memories. What he found surprised him as they began to dance. Got it? She asked playfully. Or do I need to draw you a picture? Ka snorted, eyeing her dubiously. You are going to drive them mad. We, she corrected with a conniving smile. We are going to drive them mad. As you wish, Ka said with a grin as they moved in and around their fellow dancers. When do we start? Right now, Kesarah replied as the music built to a crescendo, and she spun away from him, her heels tapping rhythmically with each measured step.